object of the van was to make it stealth. The exterior has virtually nothing that shows. There's no electrical outlet, there's no water hookups, there's no awning. It needed to be able to be converted into a cargo van as well so that I could haul stuff, because I sold my pickup years ago. So either side there's nothing showing, and the only thing we have a solar panel up on the roof, but I specifically built it so that the supports weren't visual. So when you're down here, you can't see anything. So we got a roof vent and a 300-watt solar panel on the top. Things like gray tank is underneath the van. To drain it, you just reach down. There's a hose that comes down with a plug in it. So that's hidden up underneath. Then on the other side of the van, there's a electrical shore power hook up. It's just a regular 3-prong 15-amp cord, and it just hooks up on a little hook up underneath, so you don't see that either. So very specifically, I don't have anything on the outside of the van other than the solar panel, which gives it away as being somebody sleeping in it. The major pieces, we got a cabinet here. On the front, it has a cupboard. You have 3 drawers.
You built all these?
Yes. So this has a drop-down table. That's just there to keep the support from moving. This is my shower water hose. This is a filter that I use when I'm putting water into our freshwater tank. And this is just a drain extension for the drain that comes out under the van. Then you have a swivel seat. My latch could be better. Everything in here has been designed with CAD before I started building. So I didn't just come in and start building. I knew ahead of time what I wanted. I knew ahead of time how to make it fit. I built the swivel. I was dumb. I didn't just buy somebody else's. In hindsight, I should have bought somebody else's. It took a couple of tries to make it work. But then on the sink, I got a table. It comes up.
It's a really nice and sturdy hinge.
Yeah, all the hinges are aluminum, so they're easy to cut. And it slides out so it lines up with the seat. So it lines up. So it's good for computer use and eating for a single person. Back here, there's a bench seat on each side. The bed is made by 4 panels that fold down. So if this is now set up for 1 person traveling. But if you want a bed for 2 people, you just fold down the bed, and so now you have a place for 2 people to sleep. And the other advantage to this is I can fold all 4 of them up and remove the table, and then I can haul plywood or wood or stuff in the van. Like the Transit, it's to me it's a much better vehicle than the Sprinter that I had. I had a 08 Sprinter, and this is gas. I want to get rid of the diesel. And this so far has been much more reliable. When you build a van, very limited space, and so you have to make everything usable for more than one thing. The problem with putting an indoor shower in is it's a huge waste of space. So I did it so that it is useful for something besides a shower. So one of the things I got out of it is I got a lot more counter space, because I got another counter here that's about the same height as the sink counter. So when you're preparing food, it's nice to have 2 places to put dishes and stuff and food. Then I just have 2 bins. This stores the pots and pans, and the second one stores dry food, not refrigerated food. And then, like, my wife needs to get up in the middle of the night, and so what we do is we just pivot the shelves up out of the way, and then the porta potty is usable. 2 things wrong with most people with porta potties: they have to drag them out, and they're not at the right height. At the bottom is the shower drain pan. Happens to have a rubber plug in it right now. And then when I use the shower, I pull the plug out of the way. So that's how you use this space as a toilet. If you want to use it as a shower, you take out these rods, which are made just like a toilet paper holder rod with a spring in the center. So now you got full height. You take out the shelves. Now you have a shower. You kneel down, you stick your head in the shower to do your hair, because that's where the water sprays out. So you take the same hose that I used to fill the water tank, and I have a quick disconnect to the pump, and I can support the hose off this shelf. You just have a switch up here to turn the pump on, and to conserve water, you use the valve on the hose. So this is a solid flow. This is not a spray nozzle like you would have in a normal shower. And that's the trick for not getting water out of the shower. Okay. So you get down on your knees and you get your hair wet, soap it, rinse it. When you're done with your head, you get in the shower. It's a Navy shower with, you get wet, soap, and then rinse off.
How tall are you, sir?
5'10".
5'10", and you are fine there, huh?
Yeah, I've got another probably 3 or 4 inches above me. That's one advantage of the Transit. The high roof is taller than the Sprinter high roof. Huh. And so this makes this more usable, because you lose some space because of the drain pan.
So it's very efficient. I mean, it's very quick.
You know, what you want to do is get clean. It's not like your shower at home. It's not that enjoyable, but it does get you clean. And it's also, because this is stealth, I do a lot of city parking. A lot of people put showers out the back doors and stuff. Well, you know, in downtown Carmel, that's not something that's going to work very well. So it's nice to have the shower inside. I don't have a built-in stove. Don't want a built-in stove.
You don't want a built-in stove?
No, because first off is I don't want to cook in the van any more than I have to, because you get the grease and fumes and smells in the van. So I have a 2-burner stove that can be put on the sink up here to cook. It can be put on a shelf out here. You can cook out here, or you can pick it up and take it and put it on a picnic table. I used to have a little Coleman folding stove, but when I'm outside, when it's windy, that wouldn't boil water, because it was only a 10,000 BTU burner stove. So then I went looking and I found this, and it's got 17,000 BTU burners. And so it does not have any problem boiling water, no matter what the weather conditions.
And it's propane?
Propane. The cylinders are in here. That's a 1 pound bottle. It's refillable.
Did you consider other technologies like electrical?
Well,
induction?
yeah. If you use induction or electrical, you end up requiring a lot bigger electrical system to power it. I have 2 1,000-watt inverters, and the 1,000-watt won't run an induction stove. One of the things that I decided early on was to have the sink in this location, so when you're working at the sink and using the sink, you can look out and see the world with the slider door open. To fill the freshwater tank, there's a PVC pipe with a plug in it. This is an old-fashioned radiator fill hose, which has a valve on it, so when you go to fill the freshwater tank, you don't get water everywhere. And I use the same valve from the water pump. It's a little solar water pump. It's not a normal RV water pump because they're huge and noisy. This one's very small and quiet, but the water comes out of this pump. It goes over and up to the sink faucet, or it can come out here. And then this has quick disconnect on it, so you can have pressure water outside the van. I also take it over and fill the shower water tank, and the same hose I use for showering. So they're used for 3 things. The Sprinter, I had a regular RV water pump, and it took the space from like here to there, and it was noisy. And it also pressurizes the water system, and I didn't want the water system to be pressurized all the time, because if I had a leak, then the water all end up inside the van. So the way this is set up is there's a switch on the wall that starts and stops that pump. And that's I can show you.
So one question would be, do you need the solar panel to be working?
No, I have a house battery, which should be on.
So let's say the system works, takes the energy from the battery.
Correct.
Okay.
So you just hit the switch, and you get water. Hit the switch, turn it off. And you can leave the pump running and turn the water off with a regular faucet. I only have cold water, don't need hot water to the sink. I can wash dishes with cold water just fine. So you can see how quiet that is, that compared to a regular RV pump.
How do you find out about this option? Is there anybody just doing the same? Or
No, nobody that I know of is doing it. Now, there's a lot of things in this van that aren't done like everybody else. Fortunately, I wasn't experienced in RV building, so I came into it with my eyes open and didn't necessarily have to do everything exactly like everybody else did it. The bed, we used 2 self-inflating mattress pads. Tried one to start with and it wasn't thick enough and you'd bottom out, stick your elbow down to the plywood, but 2 of them is very comfortable. Then you can fold up during the day these 2 panels, and then you end up with a seat, table for 2 people. You could also use it for, tailgating. If you took out, put all 4 of them up, and then you could have 4 people that sit at a table. So then the table, if you want to use this as a cargo van, you take this stuff, take the bedding out, fold those 2 up against the wall, and there's 4 bolts. You just unbolt this leg from the floor, because the floor is all made with 80/20. This is slotted, so you can stick bolts in the slots. So the whole framework, everything here, like all of the sink and all of the cupboards are all made out of 80/20 with plywood panels or drawers or whatever. This stuff is 1.5 inches square, 5/16 carriage bolts slide in the slot. So if you want to bolt something to it, you just put a carriage bolt in. If you need to bolt something to the end, the center hole is the right diameter for a 5/16 tap, so you could screw something in the end. They come in different thicknesses, so in a van you want the lightest one they make of that size. You can buy them with solid sides, like this smooth side, which I did on the corner of the cabinets because it looks nicer than having a slot. You can buy them with 2 sides, you can buy them with 3 sides or just 1 slot. You can buy them with 1 side and 3 slots. What you buy depends on where you want to use it. Yeah. One other thing that you got to keep in mind is aluminum is a good conductor of heat. In a Sprinter, I made the mistake of bolting the aluminum framework to the van, and so I bypassed all the insulation. So when it's cold, you reach up and you touch the aluminum, it's the same temperature as the van steel. So one of the things I did different on the Transit is there's some sort of insulation between the framework and the van. So it's either a piece of plywood, like those back cabinets, they're hung with a piece of 1/2 inch plywood. So that is the thermal break. In a bolt, I would put a plastic spacer between the metal. This is also neat about 80/20 is you can put tie downs any place you want. You just stick it in and turn it and you've got a tie down. Done a lot of experimenting. If you want to put a 1/4 inch plywood panel in, you just use a wood block bolted into the 80/20. Another way to put panels on is I make these fittings and you can bolt it down, then you can put the panel on, and that's for removable panels because I need to be able to get to the battery, I need to be able to get the electrical, so I use a tapped connector for that. So then you got just tying 2 pieces together. You can just use a piece of flat bar with 3 bolts. So you just buy this in length and drill holes in it. They make neat little fittings that allow you to tie down electrical cabling. Then if you want to bolt something to the extrusion, you use economy nuts. They just slide in the slot and that gives you a threaded hole. So it's a matter of just picking the right thing for what you're trying to do. This is 80/20 and I don't have any doors. Doors just, they rattle and they get in the way. If you want to get something out of a basket, you just pull the basket out and it also increases your storage because you have things in a basket or the wall. If you had a door here, you couldn't fill the basket because the stuff would fall out when you open the door. So the baskets are, in my opinion, the right way to do upper cabinets.
How do you make sure they don't...
there's a lip, there's a 1 inch. They can't fall out. I thought I was going to have to add more to make them stay in, but it ends up what I have, this 1 inch here is enough. So in back, I moved the table a little bit further forward than I had in the Sprinter so I could fit my bike in there. Since I don't need to have the bike storage underneath, I can have a table height, which then allows me to have the 2 benches and a table. And I'm also low enough that when I sit up in bed, I don't hit my head. So I'm 5'10". That was a mistake I made in the Sprinter. I filled these windows with insulation. So I had a 70-inch long bed. And I thought it wouldn't be a problem sleeping a little bit diagonal, but it was not comfortable. So in the Transit, I kept the insulation down to 1.5 inches on each side, and I kept the indent for the window so that This van's got a 73.5 inch long bed.
And you fit almost perfectly, right?
Well, if I lay on the floor, I have my wife measure me because I sleep on my stomach, and from the top of my head to the tip of my toes that are stuck out, if you sleep on your stomach, I'm 73.5 inches long, so I just fit. If you always sleep on your back or your side, then that's not, you can be a taller person. These panels are actually insulated because there's a 1-inch rigid polyiso center core, and then a 1/4 inch plywood on the top, and then the indoor-outdoor carpeting on the bottom. So this is something I haven't seen anybody else do either. I have another set just like this. Okay. And if we're traveling, we just put the 2 sets on the back so that we could use the front part of the table during the day. The way I determined this bottom edge of this cabinet was by stringing a rope across, and I kept moving the rope up and in and out until I found the ideal location for the edge, so that when I sit up in bed, I don't hit the cabinet. Yeah, it's close. I can feel it. It's my hair, but I wanted to maximize the amount of storage, and so I wanted it as low as I could have it and as far out as I could have it, and still be not hitting my head.
But again, I'm impressed by how simple it is. You didn't trick it out too much.
Well, my background is I built wine bottling lines. I built stainless steel conveyors, and I built some machines. One of the machines I built was a wine case unloader, and I used hydraulic cylinders to change the height of the machine to match different height wine bottles. And so you could do that in a van. It's all could be a manual crank, just four hydraulic cylinders, and you could move the bed up and down. Since I don't need it for my use, that I don't need to go to that complication. To keep the van cool, well, you want airflow. So what you do is you cut a hole in the floor. Back under there, there's a 4x4 hole. I have a control that can open and close that air vent. Just use a lawnmower starter cord. That's closed and that's open. And again, that's something you can open and close while you're in bed. You just reach over and close it by pulling it off and letting it go. The coolest air you can get is in the shade underneath the van, and you want to pull it up and out through the roof vent so that you get airflow through the van, particularly past where you're sleeping. Or you can also reverse it, so instead of pulling air out, you can pull air in if you want. Air conditioning is another one, like an induction cooking stove. It takes just a ton of electrical power, and I don't have a lot. I have the 1,000-watt inverter run off the engine, and I have a 1,000-watt inverter that's the electrical for the house system. Lots of people put refrigerators in and they put them down on the floor. You got to get down on your knees to see what's in the refrigerator. So I want the refrigerator up where you can see in the refrigerator. And the refrigerator happens to be a Vitrofrigo brand, and I bought it because the compressor unit is down at the bottom at the back of the refrigerator, which is not as very usable space. Instead of most of them have the compressor unit up behind the freezer. So the freezer ends up being small. And this freezer ends up being about twice as big as the Dometic refrigerator I had in the Sprinter. So then I was pleasantly surprised to find out this particular refrigerator uses about 1/3 less power than the Dometic, same size refrigerator. And of course, when I put the refrigerators in, I have another 2.5 inches of insulation all the way on the sides, top and bottom, and add it to it, and then the refrigerator doesn't have to work as hard, and it doesn't use as much of your power.
Is it made for vans?
It's for boats. Originally, it's boat. This particular one runs on 12-volt DC or 120-volt AC, which gets us to the electrical system, because the electrical system is also somewhat odd for what people do in RVs. Most people connect their house battery to the vehicle battery for charging, and that's not the best way to charge batteries. What you're doing when you connect with a relay is you're connecting 2 different batteries together for charging, and that isn't good for either of the 2 batteries. RVs in general, that's what they do. I've got 300 watts of solar on the roof, and I got what they call an MPPT controller, which gives a 3-stage charge to the house battery. I almost never have to charge from the engine. But what I have as a backup is I have a second inverter down behind the driver's seat, and that's a 1,000-watt pure sine inverter. What it does is takes 12 volts from the vehicle 12-volt system, converts it to 120-volt AC. So when the engine's running, I can have 120-volt power from the plug outlets. I can heat my shower water, and I have a little baseboard heater underneath this seat. And on this side, behind there is a big 8D 255 amp hour battery. And underneath the middle part of the seat is a Magnum 1012 inverter, charger, transfer switch. I can turn that on with a control up here. So that takes power from the house battery and makes it into 120 volt AC power. And I use it almost always for running a microwave. I don't leave it on all the time because it uses a lot of energy. And so if I want to start the inverter, I just hit the switch. Now I'm inverting and I have power to all the duplex plugs in the van. So what else is up here? You got two selector switches. The top selector switch can either be off or it can be turned to the vehicle power, which is this first inverter that's driven off the engine. That gives me 120 volt power. Or I can turn it to shore power, which is the cord that I showed you underneath the van. So this, I have a choice of where I get my 120 volt power. Then it goes through a dual pole circuit breaker, and it goes to the second selector switch. The second selector switch can be off. It can take power to the charger. It can take power to the air heater, or it can take power to heat shower water. So basically what you're doing, you're taking 120 volt power and you're sending it back to that inverter that's underneath the table seat. And it can then power your plugs. That's a 12 volt outlet there, electrical. Then there's the end of an extension cord, and I just kept the end and mounted it here, so I have one 120 volt AC plug there. So in back, if I remove the bedding, so the bed gets out of the way, and I could take the bike out. So you can seat four people at the table. What's different about what I've done is it's not a one big platform that with a mattress in it that uses all the space and is claustrophobic. And I end up with, during the day, you can end up with a place for two people to eat and use the table, play cards. And there's just, you can see the 2 bolts on that leg.
Oh, yeah.
So the whole thing can come out quickly. Take 10 minutes to take the table out. So the curtains, I think the wrong place to put a curtain is behind the front seats like everybody does. So I can put a curtain in 4 different places in this van. If it's just me city camping, I can have a curtain here. So it only this last 27 inches is blocked. If it's my wife and I both, then I can put the curtain in that location, which just covers the 54-inch wide bed. And another choice is just covering the back part of the van. So this is the center curtain. This is just a cloth on 2 sides. And for the winter, it's insulated. It's got thin slate insulation between the 2 sides.
That's effective?
The answer is so far no. It was my great idea that was going to work, and so far my testing says it doesn't work. So next winter I'll test some more. So that's the center curtain. Then there's 2 curtains, one on each side, and you don't want it all one piece, so you can get in and out to the bed easy. And then this can also go up in front. This is right behind the front seats, so that you want to block that off if you're showering. If you want to go to the very back. When you're trying to stealth camp, if you stick things in the windshield and have a curtain, you're telling people that you're sleeping in it. So if you put your curtain all the way towards the back, like looking in from the front window, you can't really tell. Your depth perception doesn't let you see that there's somebody sleeping in the back. The side curtains, they hang off of a piece of plywood. So the side curtains sit on each side, and it overlaps so you don't get any gap between them. Because what I do when I stealth camp is during the day I figure out where I'm going to park that night. I then park someplace legal, and I'll brush my teeth and get ready for bed. I'll put up the window curtains, and I'll put up these curtains, and then I'll drive in and park, and I don't turn any lights on. I have no noise, so I can be quiet, and then when the sun comes up, you leave. The other thing I've done, I bought a 12-volt heating pad, and I stick this 12-volt heating pad underneath the sleeping bag. And I stay warm with a 12-volt heating pad, and I let the inside of the van get cold. And then in the morning, I bought the optional remote start that the Transit has, and I push a button while I'm still in bed. I start the engine, and I get heat from the dashboard, and if I set it up correctly, then I will also get heat from my electric heater from that inverter. So I warm the van, and once it's warm enough, then I get out of bed. So I do not try to heat the van all night. The only problem, that leaves your head out of the sleeping bag, and so your head gets cold. So you buy a snowboarder's balaclava, and you put that on your head, and your head stays warm. So everything's a sequence of learning. The last time I was down someplace it was windy, this floor blew up. So what I did recently is I just went and bought some indoor-outdoor carpeting, and I just have it laying in here so I can actually take the carpeting out and hose it down and sweep it. And the floor itself, the bottom layer is polyiso insulation, rigid, 1 inch thick. Then there's a layer of fiberglass shower wall material. And then finally there's a 3/8 inch gym mat for the top of the floor. There is a light to going out the door. Lots of people put lots of lights inside a van. In the Transit, they came with 4 LED lights. They're just little rectangular lights, LEDs, and they had 2 of them in the center of the van. They had 2 over the rear of the van. So I reused those lights, but instead of having 2 in back, I put 1 back here with a switch. So when you're coming in the van or in the back, you can turn the light on and off there. I put 2 over the sink and learned that where you put the switch is what counts. You want to put the switch where you're standing. And also that switch, when I'm outside, I can turn the light on to come in. And then for the shower, the switch is up here on the wall. So you can turn the switch on and off. And the only other lights I have in the bottom slot of this aluminum extrusion, I have a string of LEDs on both sides. And you put the switch where you can reach it from the aisle like I just did, or you're in bed, you can reach up and turn the lights on and off in bed. Where these panels come down for the bed, well, those are my window covers. This is also window depth space, so I decided to, I'll make some pockets to store stuff in, that space that was available instead of just covering it. So I did that on both sides. You notice there's no rack on the top. Almost everybody builds a rack out of the 80/20 or something else, and that ends up being very visual. You can see it. So what I did is I put a rack inside the van underneath the roof because the roof is too thin. I got roughly $18,000 above the cost of the van.
Commercial ones would be...
Well, they sell them $120,000, something like that. And so I've got plus 2 or 3 years of my life. So instead of a metal latch, I made it out of rubber, so it no longer rattles. They don't come open like the ones I had on my Sprinter were push buttons. This one, you mechanically pull open and the latch goes down. So it positive comes down, and when you close it, it hits your latch, hits this and pushes it down automatically. The only thing that I didn't build was the stainless steel water tank, the gray water tank, the fresh water tank, the shower water tank, and the shower drain pan, and a couple other pieces of stainless. Other than that, I've done everything. Well, I also had the dovetail drawers made.
So far, the system you've designed, is it the way you want it?
Well, you basically look at what everybody else does, and you pick what you think is good and discard what you don't think is good. And so it takes a while to, to learn. Like the electrical, I didn't know anything about electrical, and like I went up to the Sprinter Fest up in Oregon, and I had no idea what people were even talking about. There's wire, the ones that come through the floor down here, so they come across the van and the floor. You just slot the insulation and put the wire in. It's pretty simple. You keep asking questions, and you keep reading, and you keep, finally some of the things start making sense to you.